Kevin was driving through the desolate mountain road when his fuel light blinked on. He quickly started looking for a gas station. A flickering, old sign by the roadside caught his attention. Bona Gas Station, open 24 hours. With no other options, he decided to pull in. The station looked abandoned, with peeling paint, broken lights, and a single, rusty pump. As Kevin stepped out of his car, a chill ran down his spine. The night was unnaturally quiet. No crickets, no wind, just silence. He walked toward the small building to pay, but the door creaked open on its own as he approached. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust and gasoline. Behind the counter sat a man, his head down, motionless. Kevin cleared his throat, but the man didn't move. Hesitant, Kevin stepped closer. "Excuse me, I need some gas," Kevin said, his voice echoing in the empty room. The man slowly lifted his head. His eyes were hollow, almost as if he were looking through Kevin. "You're not supposed to be here," the man whispered, his voice hoarse and broken. "No one comes here anymore." Confused and uneasy, Kevin stepped back. "I just need enough to get to the next town." The man stood up, his movements stiff and unnatural. "The pump, it's broken. Has been for years." His eyes locked onto Kevin's, and a sickening grin spread across his face. "But you won't need it. No one ever leaves." Suddenly, Kevin felt a presence behind him. Cold breath brushed against his neck. He turned around, but there was nothing. Panic gripped him as the room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in, the air growing colder. He bolted for the door, but it slammed shut before he could reach it. The man behind the counter started laughing, a deep, guttural sound that echoed in the small room. Kevin pounded on the door, desperate to escape, but it wouldn't budge. The man's voice filled the air once more. "You're one of us now." As Kevin turned back, he saw something in the reflection of the dirty glass. It wasn't just him and the man anymore. There were shadows, figures moving in the darkness, their hollow eyes staring, waiting. And then the lights flickered out. It was well past midnight when Sarah's car started sputtering, the gas needle dangerously close to empty. She was miles away from the nearest town, driving through a deserted highway surrounded by thick forest. Just as she was beginning to panic, a small gas station appeared out of nowhere, its neon sign glowing faintly. "Briggs Gas, full service." Relieved, Sarah pulled in. The station looked run down, with old-fashioned pumps and a faded sign swinging in the breeze. The building was dimly lit, but there was no one in sight. She waited for a moment, expecting an attendant, but no one came. Deciding to fill the tank herself, Sarah got out and walked toward the pump. As she lifted the nozzle, a cold voice echoed from behind her. "You should leave." Startled, Sarah spun around. A man stood near the station's entrance, his face mostly hidden in shadow. His clothes looked like they belonged to another era, covered in dirt and grease. "Excuse me?" Sarah asked, heart racing. "You shouldn't be here," he repeated, stepping closer. "This place, it's not safe." Sarah looked at him, confused but determined. "I just need gas. I'll be out of here as soon as I fill up." The man didn't move, his eyes fixed on her with a strange intensity. "No one who stops here ever leaves." He whispered the last part, barely audible over the wind picking up. Suddenly, the station's lights flickered, and the hum of the pump died. Darkness swallowed the area, and Sarah felt an icy chill creep up her spine. She turned back to the man, but he was gone, vanished without a sound. Panicking now, she ran to the front door of the gas station to see if anyone else was inside. The windows were dirty, but through the grime, she could see flickers of movement, a shadow, or something more. She tried the door, but it was locked. Then, the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, came from behind the station. Heart pounding, Sarah ducked around the corner, looking for the source. What she saw froze her in place. Behind the building stood a row of old, rusted cars, all abandoned, covered in dust and overgrown with weeds. But that wasn't the worst part. Each car had its door open, and in every one sat a person, completely still, their eyes wide open, staring blankly ahead. The man from earlier was among them, his face twisted in silent terror. They weren't alive. Sarah backed away, heart racing, desperate to get to her car. As she did, she heard a faint whisper, "You're next." Jake had been driving for hours on the back roads, trying to shave time off his trip. The sun had long since set, and his GPS had lost signal hours ago. His fuel was almost gone when he spotted a small, unmarked gas station on a lonely stretch of road. The station was old and decaying, with cracked windows and a rusted roof. A flickering light buzzed above the entrance. The sign simply read, "Fuel," in peeling letters. Desperate, Jake pulled in and parked by the pump. There was no one around, but the station looked functional enough. He decided to try his luck. As he stepped out of the car, an eerie stillness hung in the air. The wind didn't blow, no insects chirped, nothing. He scanned the area. No houses, no other cars, just empty fields stretching into the dark. Jake walked to the pump and lifted the nozzle, but nothing happened. Frustrated, he headed to the small, rundown convenience store attached to the station. The door creaked as he pushed it open, and a bell chimed softly, though the sound seemed swallowed by the heavy silence. Inside, the store was empty, rows of dusty shelves, expired snacks, and dim lighting. There was an old cash register, but no attendant in sight. Jake called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. As he walked further into the store, he noticed a faint buzzing noise coming from the back room. He hesitated, but curiosity pulled him toward the door. Slowly, he pushed it open. The room was dark, except for a single television in the corner, flickering with static. Sitting in front of it, facing away from Jake, was a figure. It was completely still, slumped slightly in the chair. "Hey, I need some gas," Jake said, his voice shaky. The figure didn't move. Jake's pulse quickened. He stepped closer, reaching out, but just as his hand was about to touch the figure's shoulder, the TV cut out, plunging the room into darkness. Suddenly, the figure jerked upright with a loud, crackling sound, as if its bones had been twisted and broken. It turned slowly, its face hidden in the shadows. In the dim light from the store beyond, Jake could see something unnatural about its movements, stiff, jerky, and wrong. And then it spoke, in a voice that didn't sound human. "The pump is full, but you won't leave." Jake stumbled back, heart racing, and bolted for the door. As he reached the front, he heard footsteps echoing behind him, slow and deliberate. He burst outside and jumped into his car, fumbling for his keys. The gas gauge was now full, inexplicably. His hands shook as he started the engine, glancing back at the store. The figure was standing in the doorway now, watching him. As he sped away, he glanced at his rear-view mirror and froze. The gas station, the building, the road behind him, everything had vanished. All that remained was an empty, endless road. No signs, no lights, nothing. But in the reflection of his mirror, something was sitting in the back seat.